Thanks for pressing play. This is the Pirate Street Journal. 3 topics from business, tech, enterprise software, and the consumer, all through a category design lens. 10 minutes per topic, 30 minutes total. I'm Bree Clark. With me is Eddie Yoon and Christopher Lochhead. Hey ho, let's go. Topic 1. The world's largest software company is down about 20% this year, and it's about to do the least Microsoft thing imaginable. It got into a very analog, human, and hard to scale business, consulting. Topic 2. SpaceX is coming for your cell phone. Last week, an entire country started connecting straight to SpaceX satellites, direct to cell, no towers required, and Wall Street's theory on how it wins the US market is simple: buy T-Mobile. Topic 3. 175,000 Europeans die from heat every year, and they're fighting the cure in court. The biggest technology story of the year might be a window unit. We are recording on Friday, July 3rd, and celebrating America 250. Happy 4th of July, pirates. Hey ho, let's go. Topic 1. Yesterday, Microsoft launched a brand new company. It's called Microsoft Frontier. $2.5 billion, and the whole point of it is to send those engineers inside other companies to make their AI actually work. That is consulting. Microsoft, the highest margin software business ever built, just walked into one of the lowest margin businesses in tech on purpose. 2 years earlier, Amazon committed $1 billion to the exact same idea. OpenAI and Anthropic have both spun up their own versions in recent months, and every AI player all at once decided the answer was to put humans next to the customer. Microsoft is down about 20% this year, one of the worst performers in big tech. It shed over $1 trillion in market value from its peak. It's spending $190 billion on CapEx this year alone. And its next move is to hire people and sit them down next to clients. The Wall Street Journal covered the announcement. What they didn't ask is why the richest software company on the planet suddenly needs a small army of humans to sell software that is supposed to sell itself. So, Christopher, is Microsoft getting this close to the customer the smartest move of the AI era?
Well, Bree, it's great to see you. Eddie, it's great to see you. I want to wish everybody from the bottom of my heart. I know this will air after July 4th, but happy 4th. I hope you had a wonderful 4th. And God bless America 250 and America 500. And we just wrote something that is one of the most powerful things I think we ever wrote on why America is a new category of country and 25 predictions for the future. And we're really proud of it. So check it out at categorypirates.news. All right. That said, okay, this is really fascinating and fantastic. Wall Street has gotten this completely wrong again, and the Wall Street Journal has gotten this wrong again because they follow companies, not categories. Okay, why is Microsoft doing this? Multiple reasons. Let's go through them. First, here's the truth. Companies have embraced AI for pilots, but it's very few S&P 500 companies and frankly, very few mid-market companies who have reoriented their business around AI, who have done what we wrote about now, I think 2 years ago, where we declared that you had to treat AI as the co-founder of your career and the co-founder of your company. They so far have not done that. They've used AI in pilots. So in order to make sure full deployments happen, the major vendors have said, well, why are we getting stuck? And what we're getting stuck with is actually not the technical stuff. What they're getting stuck with is the vision. What should we do? What could we do with AI that would make the biggest difference? That's the first thing. That's where companies are getting stuck. S&P 500 companies, mid-market companies, et cetera. And so we need to get them unstuck. That's the first thing. Here's the second thing. Very few people have truly figured out what are the breakthrough new ways of thinking about problems that AI solves, and therefore, what are the solutions required? To think about it in a precise way, what are the applications required? And while a lot of people have thoughts about that, some people are getting traction with delivering AI, if you will, applications, although generally they're not being called that. For the most part, it's hard to know what's going to work for customers. When you consult, you fix those two problems. You break the adoption barrier by finding the use cases that matter. And here's the dirty little secret. We are in the startup phase of AI applications for enterprise. We absolutely are. And most startups begin life with a relatively small piece of technology and a bunch of smart people who help customers deploy it as consultants. And so in the beginning, software companies are often a consulting company with some tech tied to it. The consultants work with the customers. They figure out the use cases. They figure out the problems. They figure out where the real value is. That leads to the category insights and ultimately, what should we build with our software? That's what Microsoft is doing here. It's genius. And I'll say actually two other things. This is also a harbinger of massive failure on behalf of IBM Global Services, massive failure on behalf of Accenture, and massive failure on all of the Indian systems integrators and consultants. The Microsoft, Anthropic, OpenAI, and many others would not be standing up massive consulting units if the legacy consultants had stood up. And then the one other thing I'll say, part of my background is I was the founding CMO of an internet consulting company called Scient. And in the dot-com era, Scient became the fastest growing professional services startup in history. We also, at the end of the internet era, became the fastest shrinking, but that's a whole other story. At that time, there were literally hundreds of venture-backed professional services firms chasing the internet opportunity to help people deploy the tech. And what made Scient is we focused on the business strategies of what we called e-business at the time and the tech second and put them together to help people build e-businesses. Okay. So where are the Scients of this space? They're nowhere. It is shocking to me that nobody, if somebody's doing it, I want to hear about it. I have missed it. If somebody's doing it, I would like to know, where is the Scient-like legendary startup that says we're going to build a 10,000 person organization focused on AI business first, business models first, technology second, and deploying it. And so I think this is a major failure by the consulting industry, startups and incumbents, and genius by Microsoft and others who are acting as a startup, bringing consultants in to bridge the gap between what customers want and what they can do today.
Well, I 100% agree everything that you said, Pirate Christopher. And my small version of an anecdote is back in the year 2000, I want to say, I was doing work for ACCO Brands, which is the parent company of Swingline, and people have read and heard me talk about staplers and all that kind of good stuff. But we had a meeting that was delayed because the CEO of the division was late because the website had crashed. They had just stood up at the first ever company website and they were very proud of it. And they were delayed in part because the movie Office Space had come out not that long before that. And the Journal had published an article about, like, what is the deal with Milton and his obsession with the fire engine red Swingline stapler? And so when the article came out shortly after the movie and they launched a website, everyone went to the website and said, where can I buy the fire engine red stapler? And they were like, oh, we don't actually sell it on the website. And so the website crashed and it just caused chaos in the whole thing. And so, like, I think a perfect example of, is the internet powerful? Was it powerful? Absolutely. Did ACCO Brands have any real value that they got out of standing up a company website at the time? Not really. And in part, they weren't sure what to do with it. And had they actually stood it up as an e-commerce site and not just a business card, a digital business card, they would have made bank. Now, they would have pissed off a lot of their customers because they were not a direct-to-consumer company. They sold through stores, Office Superstores, Staples, Office Max, Office Depot. But it's the prime example of how much distraction and how much expense had gone towards, let's chase a new technology that everybody else is seeming to do without having a clear idea for what is the actual purpose and goal that we have there. So that, I think there's a lot of kind of a swing line stories that are going on now. We're chasing the AI, we're spending tokens, and we're not quite sure because we haven't thought through what the actual use case of it. And so what Microsoft is doing, I think, makes a lot of sense. Here's what I would do if I was Satya. And so I think, to your point, Christopher, the tech-based consulting firms have really missed the mark on it. Here's the reality, is that in any consulting firm, it's really the senior partners that drive the lion's share of the value. They have all the relationships, they have all the war stories, they have all the intellectual capital. And, truth be told, consulting is a teaching hospital business model. There's a lot of bait and switch that happens. You show up to the famous teaching hospital, you see the head of surgery, and you're like, wow, this person's amazing. they put you under, and when you wake up, there's a first-year resident standing over you, like, I've never done this before. What do I do now? Type of a thing, right? And that's
Who
kind of the
hopefully
model.
didn't learn the surgery on YouTube.
It may or may not have been that case.
So I have a question for you, Eddie. Why is it that A, the major consulting firms have failed here so much, and B, unless I'm missing it, there doesn't appear to be a startup ecosystem of professional services
No.
startup firms?
But this is the reason, is that it's the good old Charlie Munger adage, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. And here's the deal. If I was spending all this money on that Microsoft is spending, this is how I would do it. Is that so? Number one, the vast majority of the value of consulting resides in the senior partner. Number two, consulting, at the big strategy firms, whatever else it is a high prestige, high cash compensation business. You do not get, you get equity in the shares of a private company, a partnership, but they don't have a public multiple on it. They're not liquid. You have to buy in, you sell when you leave, and all that kind of stuff like that.
It's a cash flow business.
Cash flow business, and you can do very, very well, right? I mean, my numbers are a little bit outdated, but like I think you can, easily make $1 million as a junior consultant or a partner, or near partner, and a senior partner, couple $1 million, maybe 5 to 10, give or take, in cash. And the beauty of it is
Now,
it's
Bree,
cash.
you can't live on that, but it's a nice start. Okay.
Yes. So here's the reality, Christopher. Given the numbers that I threw out, it's wonderful if you are that person and you have that in liquid, it's not, there's no vesting and all that kind of good stuff with it, right? However, there's a reason why the former CEO of McKinsey went to jail for insider trading, is that he was making 10, 15, whatever he was making, but he was hanging out with dudes that were billionaires. And you cannot get to a billionaire status on just cash year in, year out, unless you're very frugal and very smart about investing. And so if I was Microsoft, I would go poach a $10 million a year senior partner that knows how to drive transformation, that is a specialist in a niche area of a use case, and that it's going to say, Satya can walk up to them and say, look, I'll pay you half what you make in cash, but I'll quintuple what you make in a year with equity. How'd that be?
Right.
And so
they're going to leave. And I saw this. I could tell you stories about exactly this. The one other thing I'll say, and I know we're out of time on this topic, is the company that owns the business agenda in AI in the enterprise space will win. The high order bit in enterprise always is the business agenda around the tech, not the tech.
I'll piggyback 2 more things. I know we're late. One, I have some predictions. There's 3 winners in the near term from a consulting standpoint, a niche use case consulting standpoint, that are going to emerge if they play their cards correctly. First are all the bankruptcy consultancy firms, the Alvarez and Marshalls and this and that. Like, it's a very, very
Alex
clear
Partners,
use case.
that kind of group.
Alex Partners, all those guys. Yep. Hey, business is in trouble. We got 90 days to get out of the crapper. Do what you need to do it quickly, and do it smartly, and pull the business out for bankruptcy. Like, those guys and gals, they charge a bunch of money. It's a brutal business to do, but you're in the ER and you're bleeding out, and you got to triage and get that job done. That's kind of one. Second is all the due diligence M&A consultants. They're going to do great with this, right? And because the objective is very, very clear. Buy this, sell this, do this in a short amount of time. It is the most brutal form of consulting, because it's feast or famine. You don't know what's going on, and all of a sudden the deal is hot and you're working 20 hours a day for 3 weeks, and then it doesn't go through. All that stuff can be done with AI so much faster, so much easier, with more accuracy, all that kind of good stuff. And the third one is going to be any consultant that's specializing in the cost efficiency standpoint is going to do great. Cost takeout is the simplest thing to do, not always the most strategic, because sometimes you cut not just fat, you cut to the bone and muscle, but it is the most certain thing that you can do. And those are the 3 areas: bankruptcy, due diligence, M&A, and cost cutting. Those niche folks, those niche partners are going to do great in this era, and Microsoft would do themselves well to go look on LinkedIn, and which they own, and cherry pick all of them, and not buy a consultancy and not hire the wrong people.
Quick break, pirates. Everything Pirate Eddie just said about the consumer, he's been saying things like that for 20 years across Harvard Business Review and now Category Pirates. Everything Pirate Christopher just said about category design, he literally wrote the book on it. 3-time public company CMO, co-author of Play Bigger. Now imagine both brains on demand for your business, your career, your next decision. That's the Pirate Eddie bot and the Pirate Christopher bot, trained on every category Pirates mini book ever written, every super consumer framework, every creator capitalist take, and every category design playbook. You ask, they answer, in their voice with their lens. They come with the founding tier on Substack, alongside the full mini book library, the audiobook library, digital copies of all 7 of our big books in every Scooby snack we drop. You can find it at categorypirates.news/subscribe. Now let's get back into the next topic. Topic 2, SpaceX wants your phone. Starlink already won space, more than 10,000 satellites, more than 10 million home broadband subscribers on a service that's only 6 years old. Now they're thinking about the phone in your pocket. SpaceX put a number on that ambition in its IPO filing last month. It projected the addressable market for Starlink Mobile at $740 billion. And yesterday, the Wall Street Journal reported that Starlink is actively going after mobile, with a prototype handset shown to investors and a ground network under discussion. T-Mobile is already Starlink's partner. They run a service together called T-Satellite that connects your phone where the towers can't reach. The Journal is asking whether Starlink can out-signal Verizon in a Manhattan high-rise. The bigger question is whether Elon builds the first global phone company or just buys his way to the front line. So, Eddie, does Elon go after AT&T and Verizon on their home turf, or does he skip that fight entirely and build something different?
I pick option D, all of the above, or some version of something that we haven't thought about. So I think this is a fascinating one. And I believe that the first, direct to sell country is the Philippines that they've done. Right. And so what is interesting about the Philippines is that it has a couple of things that are going on. One is that there are very, very dense cities that satellites, Starlink does not work as well in a highly dense area. You need cell towers for that to work. However, the Philippines is also a set of many, 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 many hundreds of islands. It's distributed, it's remote, there's a lot of different things. And I think, as Pirate Bree knows well, Starlink is not just a great option in a remote area, it is far and away the best option out there.
It is the only option sometimes.
Absolutely. And if any of you have been on a plane recently with Starlink, you're just like, oh my gosh, this is like night and day. It's so amazing to have that happen. And so I think there's really a couple things that are going on there. Elon does not want to buy legacy companies with a lot of hee-haw. Just think back to what they did on when he bought Twitter, and what, as you remember, he cut 80% of the cost of Twitter. And his whole mantra is you have to cut farther than you know you should, because that's the only way that you know that you've gone back, and you have to rehire some of the people that you let go and the like, right? So will he buy something like a T-Mobile? I don't think he wants to. I think he wants the spectrum. He doesn't want the company. And so, and maybe it's some of the cell towers in urban areas that are hard to reach with it. But like, T-Mobile has 23 billion dollars of G&A. I mean, if you think of, I think the market cap, let's say you cut 2/3 of that out there, so you cut $16 billion of G&A, as Elon has done in the past, and you stick a 20 multiple on that. That's $320 billion of market value that can be unlocked just by doing that. But he doesn't want to be a cost cutter. He can do that. So I think there will be an interesting thing of where can he find spectrum on the cheap? How can he get it as quickly as possible? Obviously, the US market is a key one that he needs to figure out and get. But the ability to roll up global markets where, every country has their own national provider that, may be at a cheap price, may be well run, maybe not. And I think the ability to, in the same way that Netflix is, I believe, one of the only global media companies where you can actually, branded Netflix, you sign up for that service. You don't sign up for, every country has its own TV network and media network. Netflix is a global media company. So I think Starlink and SpaceX will get there by, direct to sell in different countries that are going to be. They'll probably do it in rural areas, as they have done in the US already, where it's like such far and away the best option. And here's what I would do if I was AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile. I would go to Elon and say, hey, let's do this, because you don't want to be the last man standing who was not, shut out of the Elon deal. You want to be first in line with that. And it doesn't mean you have to sell out, because I don't think he wants to buy and operate another company. I think it's going to be something along those lines. So speed the spectrum, prioritizing rural areas. I did note that on X recently, he did refute that prototype handset thing. Like, he has flirted off and on with building a phone. Like, maybe we'll have to do this, maybe we won't, and this and that. But he recognizes that that's a whole nother ball of wax. And so I would bet on all of the above: partnerships, direct to sell, maybe some M&A, but also I would also bet on the non-obvious part, because that's kind of part of Elon's playbook.
Okay, so three things here to just multiply what Eddie said. Number one, the Spectrum thing I think is probably real. History is a good teacher here. Google bought Motorola primarily for patents and technology. Okay, so buying Spectrum might not be stupid, and it might not be for the traditional business. Who knows? We'll find out. Number two, people forget one of Elon's core competencies, core capabilities is radically analog. Elon can stand up a rocket. Elon can stand up a data center and many other things at a speed and cost that heretofore were unheard of by others. So if what he wants to do here is stand up space-based as well as terrestrial capabilities here, and it requires some analog building of new stuff, nobody can build analog new infrastructure like that man. And the third thing I'll leave you with is this. As the game board continues to get played out in AI, let's look to the past and what we can learn. Let's go back to Microsoft. Microsoft, in large part, became Microsoft because of Microsoft Office. What's Microsoft Office? Microsoft is 3 or 4, depending on how you want to think about it, independent applications that at the time had category kings in each space. WordPerfect in word processing, Lotus 123 in spreadsheets, Harvard Graphics in graphics presentations, DBase in databases, etc. Okay, what did Microsoft do? Microsoft said, "Oh, these are not individual categories; they're one category," and they did incredible things. They gave them all the same UX. They made data interoperable amongst all the applications, and of course, comparatively, they lowered the bar on price. And so that's called bundling. Now, Elon here appears to be creating the ultimate forward-leaning bundle. Whether T-Mobile is part of it, time will tell. But make no mistake, that's what's going on here.
I'll add one last non-obvious play is, and I love, Christopher, the Google buying Motorola is the perfect segue for this, is that go back to the future. How did Elon get his start after Zip2 and everything else? It was at PayPal. What was the ambition at PayPal? He wanted to name the company X at the time, and he wanted it to be the everything money company, transactions and the like, right?
And he's never given up on that idea.
Absolutely.
And China has done it with a universal application that is money and everything else. And he knows if he controls the communication platform, then he can control the transaction platform that he builds on top of it.
Yes. So you see all these breadcrumbs that Christopher's dropping here. What are the other ones? So he's always wanted to do this since PayPal, China, the all-in-one app that they have. And then thirdly is X just recently announced that they are X Money, or X Pay, I think, has been launched in beta form. So some people are being invited to do that. $10 million of FDIC insurance if you stick your money there. 6%.
$10 million of FDI insurance?
I don't know.
Oh, wow. I love the way he fights with unconventional weapons. Yes. Continue, Eddie.
6% interest on savings. So they're losing money on this to drive customer acquisition. And then you layer on, you look at your bank statements or your credit card. What is, in the world of all your payments, one of the highest payments and the most consistent ones that you will never stop paying is your cell phone bill. And so imagine a world where Elon goes and gets Spectrum, goes and
here's how
direct to consumer.
Right you are, Eddie. I believe, Bree, maybe look it up while Eddie finishes his point. I believe something north of 50% of homeless people in the United States have mobile phones. The other day, I stopped at a stoplight. I swear to God, I'm not making this up. There was a homeless person begging for money with the sign, etc. The homeless person begging for money with the sign had Apple earbuds in. And I know how much they cost because I just bought some new ones. They're $200. And now the person asking for money is wearing the highest value tech. Geez Louise.
Yeah, you can be a billionaire, you can be a homeless person and have the same tech, right? And so this whole thing of it might be the grand master plan, it is The mobile category, a huge part of the TAM, absolutely. Anywhere from 200 to $400 billion of year revenue a year are generated through global mobile and cell service and whatnot. So it's a big business. It's a steady business. It's a cash flowy business. All of that is the perfect beachhead to really throw a disruptive punch to the face. Good old Mike Tyson. Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face, right?
And design a new category around them while they're not even looking.
Yes.
All right, quick fact checked on that. Research shows that an estimated of 70 to 94% of homeless adults in America will own cell phones. Large majority are currently carrying smartphones, but we don't currently know how many. But
Which is
that
when
huge.
90% of homeless people have smartphones, that tells you something about the criticality of the category.
Well, and you look at globally, the penetration of smartphones, regardless of the per capita income, is off the charts. So
All right, topic 3. Europe is fighting the cure. 175,000 Europeans die from heat every single year, according to the World Health Organization. Last week, Paris hit 104 degrees. That has happened on only 4 days since records began in the 1800s. The fix has existed for over a century. Air conditioning, but only 5% of British homes have it, 25% in France. Even in Italy, it's barely more than half. In Paris, people are in court fighting their own neighbors for the right to install a unit. One man who breathes with a ventilator has spent 2 years and thousands of dollars suing for permission to cool his apartment. Compare that to the US, where heat kills around 2,000 people a year, and we barely think about it. We lose almost 39,000 people a year to car crashes and still get in the car every morning. So, a continent is choosing 175,000 deaths a year over a 100-year-old machine, and it's the same continent whose consumers are now so afraid to spend money that their own economies are stalling out. There's a pattern here about how people say no to the obvious, and it runs a lot further than air conditioning. This looks an awful lot like the people fighting AI in America right now. A continent choosing 175,000 deaths a year over a technology that plainly works, while half of America fights AI the same way. So, Christopher, what does Europe and the air conditioner tell us about how the fight over AI may actually end?
Well, here's the first thing to say. Sacre bleu. What is going on here? And about Europe, we'll do some work on this in the future to underscore for people who may not know. Here's my big fear. Europe is becoming a place trapped in the past where people living in the present and the future go to look at museums, eat food, and drink wine. Entrepreneurship is down, innovation is down, unicorns are down, trillion-dollar leaders are not there, etc. Anyway, back to this issue. It's called nuts, insane. We have a technology that has proven to work, that scales, that saves people's lives, never mind makes people comfortable. And Europe has been not only unwilling to adopt it, but almost ignorant of it. And now they're going to pay the price. And Bree, to your point, this is a harbinger of things that will follow, right? There were 4 ghosts that visited Ebenezer Scrooge, and the last ghost was the ghost of Christmas Future. And seeing his own death and seeing the fact that nobody gave a shit that he died is what woke Ebenezer Scrooge up. So maybe this summer is the wake-up call that Europe finally needs to get with the program and enter the 20th century. It's sad. As somebody who loves Europe, who's spent so much time there and done so much business there and loves the culture. And look, my family's originally from there. It's really sad to see Europe opt out of the present and the future. As it relates to data centers in the United States, let's not make this mistake, right? As we laid out in America 250 in Category Pirates, AI holds the promise to potentially double the GDP of the United States in a relatively short period of time, coupled with robots and with space exploration. We have a huge opportunity here to transform the future, to create a radically different future. And yet here we are talking about stopping that future. It's nuts. We don't want to do in data centers what Europe has done in air conditioning. And look, I pray for the people of Europe. This is an absolute, complete, and total failure of elected leadership. elected leadership in the United States, in some parts of our country, is inadvertently, maybe I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, making the exact same mistake with data centers. Let's make sure that the United States is the country and we are the people designing the future, not holding on to a past so that our people are going to die because we didn't adopt a new technology.
I just looked at some of the data of percentage of households with AC, and it's interesting. So Japan has 91% adoption, South Korea 86%, Saudi Arabia 63%, China 60%, and then Mexico at 16%. And then you can see all the way down to India at 5%. So the UK is closer to India on this technology than it is to Japan, the US, or South Korea. And so I think that should just tell you everything you need to know about it, is that when you look at Japan and South Korea, look at where they were, those countries, just 60 years, 70 years ago, ravaged by war, totally destitute, and look at where they are now. And you cannot tell me that AC did not have some part and place to do with it, right? Because it's not just a convenience for how you live, it matters how you work. Because AC makes you more productive if you can work in the office and be able to work longer during the summer and this and
How
that.
can
And
you go to work when it's 104 degrees out and there's no air conditioning in your office?
absolutely. And
Sacre
I remember the summer I spent in Korea during college, it was so hot. We would go from store to store just to cool off a little bit in their AC because it was just one of those things where, like, it's really hard to live life, much less be productive, much less take a risk and be entrepreneurial. So this is one of those things that I just think we need to reframe it, and because it has become ideological and you can't win ideological fights. And that the reality is the numbers, I don't think the Europeans are stupid. I think it's a reframing that has to happen. It's become emotional at some level, but hopefully as you said, Christopher, the regulatory barriers go away and you let the individuals make their choices with it. My wife and my father-in-law were just in London and they were booked in an Airbnb, and then the heat shot up and I was worried about my 86-year-old father-in-law. And the Airbnb guy was like, "We have fans, in 100-degree weather." And I'm like,
fans.
"You know what? That's not gonna cut it." And so we moved into
And
a
this is
hotel
where
and everything
there's a
else.
massive economic hit here. People can't be productive when it's 104. They freaking can't. You can't work in 104 and create things. And more importantly, what about people who are impacted by this? What about people who are sick? We've all been sick. Imagine if you just had the flu. Imagine if you had a fever and it's 104 and all you have is a fan. It's absolutely insane. I don't even know why in Europe this is a contentious topic. Do you, Bree or Eddie?
Well, I would say the only thing I can say is human nature, and that in a moment of self-reflection, I think this would be a good one for all of us as we contemplate the 4th of July weekend and America 250 is, let's assume the Europeans aren't stupid. Let's assume that this is a human issue. And let's assume that we also probably have some version of AC rejection
Data
in
center,
our
data
lives
center.
and this and that. Well, there's data centers with it. Now, not to get whatever with it, right? But, Europeans would probably point to the US and say, well, look at your gun control issue and look at the deaths that are compared to this and that with it. So I would say it's a human nature thing. Everybody has some version of this. There's probably some humility for each of us to look at, like, hey, what's the obvious thing that's going to save lives that we need to figure out? Like, why are we wholesale rejecting this and why haven't we adopted it? And I think that kind of self-reflection, as the great Roger Martin says, be reflective, not reflexive, is probably where we are in terms of the AC issue. But we hope, 175,000 Europeans, we want those people to keep living, especially when births aren't coming. And by the way, those are going to be elderly folks. It's going to skew.
Yes,
We know
that's
this
people's
already, right?
grandparents or their
Yes.
beloved aunt and uncle. This is ridiculous. Look, we all have older people in our lives. We love and cherish these older people, and I can tell you, I know you, Eddie. I know you, Bree, and I certainly know my family. We work very, very hard to give the older people in our lives who do need extra help as much enjoyment and well-being as we possibly can. And if there's ever any kind of a health issue, we try to swarm that health issue because we love our old people.
Well, and to this point, like, this is one where it's just hard to change ingrained minds. Like, right now, I'm dealing with my parents and trying to help them move out of their single family home into a more senior friendly place. And as they age, driving has become more of a risk. And I am hoping that, full self-driving gets to the point where they get some freedom back again. And I've seen this
Yes.
where people have put their elderly parents in front of a Tesla that drives itself, and they're like, "Oh, I can go to the store, I can go to the park, I can visit friends again." And so like this one, we'll have to see if he can navigate tricky Honolulu roads or not with it. But like I think there is a matter of empathy that's required. Let's make it personal, specific. Hey, this is for your parents, your grandparents, and this and that. How do we make their lives comfortable in their golden age with it? And what are the technologies that we can adopt personally? And then, as we've always talked about, word of mouth is, was, and always will be the most powerful form of marketing. This has to be a grassroots thing where the people demand it for their loved ones. And so if we do
Look,
that,
I have a friend who's pregnant right now. She's an absolutely wonderful gal, and I see her typically a couple times a week. And I always ask her how it's going. Look, I'm a dude, so what do I know? But I can't imagine being 6 months pregnant heading into this summer in Europe. A- and if you think about our society, who are the precious people in particular that we want to cherish? It's our older, more vulnerable people. It's our pregnant women and our younger people, right? Because obviously they're more vulnerable for obvious reasons. It boggles my mind.
so I think this one is, we hope for word of mouth and grassroots demand. Like the AC is a transformational tech. Full self driving is a transformational tech. There's other things that are like this, and so we also ask the great entrepreneurs and innovators of our time, whatever the issues are with AC, make them better, make them different. Make it so that it can be portable even more so than it is today, and show people the math with it. And then I think, for all of us, like, hey, what are the things that we look at? If I look at America, it's, the whole GLP adoption is showing that, look, we don't have to be an obese country. We can actually deal with this in a way. And so, like, let's figure out for each of us and all of us, like, what are the technologies that are obviously transformational, that we have an emotional barrier that's holding us back, and have empathy for those folks and hold their hand through the process, because there's a lot of greatness in life, an abundant life that you can have through technology. But, just like the reason why Microsoft is going into consulting, you have to hold people's hands through transformations.
We'll see you next week, Pirates.